For the Stoney Nakoda nations, to live in balance with the world around us has been a value that we have held long before today's environmental and conservation movements. The Bison Cultural Project is about the restoration of plains bison to the mountain landscapes of Minirpa Makoche, also known as Banff National Park. In 2017, Parks Canada released 16 bison into the remote backcountry. 5 years later, this herd has grown to over 60 animals roaming throughout the reintroduction area. As an integral part of the bison reintroduction to Banff, the Stoney Nakoda nations have conducted cultural monitoring to understand what it means for bison to once again roam freely in Minirpa Makoche. The Stoney technicians Toby Dixon, Conrad Babbitt, and Ollie Benjamin rode into the backcountry zone to observe and record the impact of the bison.
The spirits we felt, it was spiritual, humbling.
Through this fieldwork, the bison riders reconnected with the natural surroundings of Stoney Nakoda territory and experienced first-hand teachings of sacred natural space, what the late Chief Walking Buffalo referred to as Nature's University.
I felt in touch with nature out there, no other mankind except for us, following in the footsteps of the old ancestors and the buffalo. They were following in their ancestors' footsteps too.
Cultural monitoring is an Indigenous method to study herd dynamics and impacts on the ecosystem and a way to renew Stoney Nakoda connections to the land. The Stoney Nakoda people have been in the Rocky Mountains since time immemorial, but when the Banff National Park was created, we were removed in the interest of game conservation for hunting, tourism, and the civilization of Indigenous people. We were kept out of the new park. Yet, Stoney Nakota subsistence, as well as cultural and spiritual practices, are still tied to this place, even 100 years after the bison were gone. Bringing the bison back to Minirpa Makoche is an opportunity for Parks Canada and the Stoney Nakoda nations to meaningfully work together, respect both Indigenous and non-Indigenous ways of knowing, and to demonstrate reconciliation in a meaningful way. The goals of Parks Canada biologists and Indigenous elders or youth have not always aligned. Yet we share a primary desire to have free-ranging bison on grassland territories. The Stoney Nakoda people offer a way to co-manage the lands that we refer to as biculturalism. By bringing together Western science and traditional knowledge, we can create a shared space for holistic understanding that benefits from the knowledge of both perspectives.
The mountains on top of those meadows were so, they were special. There's a whole bunch of herbs that hard to get around here. We're all over there. Those meadows is where you felt that I felt like I was there before. And then I knew those plants were there.
As written by Chief Snow, wisdom harnessed with technology can go a long way in creating a better social order, a world in which all creation can survive and enjoy life to the fullest. Indigenous knowledge, or traditional ecological knowledge, is acquired through extensive and accumulative experience, informal experiments, and an intimate, holistic understanding of the environment. It is rooted in oral histories of ecological relationships across landscapes and the cultural practices that build on that knowledge. Western science and the scientific method are designed to break problems down into their components and increase understanding through methodical experimentation and repetition for internal validation. This approach aims to reduce natural variation in an effort to make systems more productive, predictable, and controllable. When we consider biculturalism as bringing together different approaches to knowledge, it can be called combining ways of knowing. Like individual strands of a braided rope, traditional ecological knowledge and Western science are independent. And just like a braided rope, this woven rope of knowledge is stronger than any single way of knowing on its own. Even while these individual ways of knowing remain independent and distinguishable from each other, braiding or combining ways of knowing is an essential part of empowering Indigenous communities and meaningfully addressing reconciliation. By working together in biculturalism to co-produce knowledge, we reflect Indigenous knowledge frameworks of two-eyed seeing and braiding knowledge. These inclusive collaborative processes of bringing together multiple knowledge systems require an ongoing commitment to relationships based on respect, humility, and wisdom. For many Indigenous people, when a new or important project is being undertaken, a ceremony is held to ask for guidance from the Creator and to tell the spirit world of the purpose of the work. Before and during the Bison Cultural Project, the Stoney Nakoda have been led by ceremony and have been guided by Stoney Nakoda elders and knowledge keepers. Conducting ceremonies was not always possible. Oppressive government policies for generations in Banff meant many of our ceremonies had not been conducted for many years in Minerva Makoche. On January 29, 2017, a bison reintroduction blessing ceremony took place at Elk Island National Park, where the bison introduced to Banff come from. In over 100 years of Parks Canada managing Elk Island National Park, this was the first time First Nations were able to gather and conduct a ceremony on these lands. In September 2020, prior to the week-long bison ride into Minerva Makoche backcountry, a ceremony was held at the Yaha Tinda Ranch, or Iarhe Tinda in the Stoney language, which means mountain meadow or mountain prairie. The ceremony was held to ensure the safety and success of the bison ride. Ceremony has not just been vital for cultural practice throughout this project, but has aided in our reconnection with place. As declared by the bison riders and elders, ceremony and cultural connections were used to build a relationship with Tatanga, the bison, and supported them during fieldwork, providing guidance, connection, and more. For the elders and ceremonial people who took part in these ceremonies, it was a reawakening.
There were some rocks that was already piled together over there, piled up in 12s. Like, seems like Those spirits over there are telling us to make a sweat lodge there.
For indigenous peoples from the plains, the bison is a species of great cultural and spiritual importance. Bison were the center of the plains ecosystem and central to indigenous peoples' lives. Their rapid loss from the landscape in the 1700s destabilized all modes of life in the region and disrupted their relationships between people and nature. If we look at our long history on this great island, we can see the very vital role that the buffalo played in supporting our way of life. In the past, the buffalo had provided us with many essential things: teepee coverings, clothing, moccasins, and blanket robes from their hides, tools, knives, and spears from their bones, medicine from certain other parts. The buffalo skull was used in the religious ceremony of the Sundance. Indeed, the buffalo has been a very important part of this great island and had an important role in our society. The bison riders observed much of the traditional knowledge that has been shared, from the dominant bull's role and why bulls or cows leave a herd, to the patterns of grazing and types of plants chosen by the bison at different times of year.
We've seen evidences. As the trail going up, there were rubbings against certain trees. Buffalo hair left on them trees. One of the big restarted wallows, I stood in the middle. It was a feeling that no, you would never forget. Hairs on the back of my neck were standing up.
This cultural affirmation is invaluable to enhancing the bison reintroduction and enriches our shared knowledge of the world. The Bison Cultural Project is about reconnecting a species to their mountain habitat. The project is also about the Stoney Nakoda people reconnecting to our traditional lands, migration routes, camping sites, hunting and gathering areas, ceremonies, and knowledge of Minerva Makoche, or Banff National Park. Symbolically, the bison brought First Nations and government together to bring a culturally and spiritually important species back to its place on the land, meaningfully including Stoney Nakoda people and knowledge into any ongoing bison reintroduction in Banff National Park offers a hopeful vision of reconciliation, co-management, and shared leadership of species at risk in one of the world's most inspiring and spiritually significant landscapes.